So you've enjoyed chapter 1. Hope you liked it. Welcome to chapter 2, where my story continues. I'm not going to tell you too much because you've got to listen to it in the story. So here we go, chapter 2.
Chapter 2. What created my visions of Vietnam? Some do it for love, others by chance. But for me, choosing Ho Chi Minh City to live was one of the most powerful and lifelong dreams anyone could imagine. I am from Australia, and most of my 50-something years on this earth carried a dream to find a real home. This is the story of how I found Ho Chi Minh City, my real home. In June 1965, a young Australian man landed at Tan Son Nhat Airport to begin a year of active service as Australia entered the conflict in Vietnam. This young man went on to become my father, and throughout the 1970s and 80s, I experienced a life that was totally wrapped around Ho Chi Minh City, although it was strangely never spoken about. Never spoken about was, in my home, both a cultural thing of the era and a trait that seemed to suit my father's character. With no guidance and no discussion, I needed to create my own version of Vietnam. And for a kid from Blacktown, in his first years of school, that was impossible without the value of my own imagination. So I did just that. I created my own picture of Vietnam. Thankfully, I don't remember what that was, but it was something. It was a start to a life that would make me inquisitive enough to pay the money, get on a plane, and to see for myself what this country is really about. Late at night, when the house was quiet and my father was whatever version of asleep he managed, I would lay in my bed with a small shortwave radio pressed against my ear. I would turn the dial slowly through static and foreign voices, through what might have been Bangkok and what might have been Manila, hunting for something I could not name. Occasionally, I would catch a fragment of a sound that felt like it had come from somewhere near Saigon. I had no idea if it had, but the possibility of it kept me turning the dial for years. What I was really hunting for, although I would not have known to say it in this way at the time, was an explanation from my father. The war had changed him in ways that none of us were equipped to discuss in the 1970s in Sydney. He was home, but not entirely back. He was present, not always there. There were things behind his eyes that he was keeping to himself, and there was a country behind those things that carried the whole story. Vietnam. The word lived in our house like a piece of furniture nobody chose and nobody moved. By the time I was old enough to be curious rather than afraid of that silence, my father was not the kind of man who could fill it, so I filled it myself, the only way I knew how, with imagination and late-night radio, and a stubborn belief that one day I would go and see the thing he could not bring himself to describe. As I grew, that vision of Vietnam morphed from a childhood fantasy to something more real, but not necessarily true. My father's comments drove an image that for a long time tainted my thinking. The result of the whispers, slurs, and throwaway comments was that a young boy found a complex relationship with Vietnam, and that place was still referred to as Saigon in my mind at a very young age. And over 4 decades, this passion and desire to turn this complex relationship into something better burned away in the deepest parts of my thoughts and dreams. But reality suppressed all these feelings, dreams, and desires for many years. I literally put all thought of Vietnam in a safe place and went about developing a career, a family, and a life in Australia. But a number of things happened that brought everything back to the top of my mind in the early 2000s. It started in 1999, when my world was rocked with the shock passing of my father-in-law. October, and I had just had my birthday. We were at a caravan on the south coast of New South Wales when a park owner rushed over and told Teresa, my wife, to come to the phone. Her father had died suddenly at work of a heart condition. I can't tell you how this affected me, but it also had underlying effects on our relationship in strange ways. And after many failings by both Teresa and myself in 2007, we decided to separate. This led to a rather speedy divorce in 2008. But I walked away from the marriage with nothing. I had literally lost everything, and to make things worse, my mental health was at an all-time low, which brought back the first memories of what I dreamed about all those years ago. Vietnam. In 2012, fortune fell my way after many years of dramas, and I found myself on a plane to Ho Chi Minh City. My memories of laying in my bed late at night with a shortwave radio, flickering and turning the dial in an attempt to hear the voice of Saigon, came flooding back as I sat on the plane. The realization that this moment was a dream I had carried most of my life, and it is now coming true. I was about to hear the voice of Saigon in person.